Vanity Fair has turned on them, Piers. Vanity Fair with a hit piece on her in particular, writing all about how she's a diva, which some of us have known and have been talking about, and how people can't handle working for her. How, okay, I want to get the quote. Let's see. Stand by. Okay. Two sources say a colleague with ties to Archetypes, her podcast, took a leave of absence after working on 3 episodes, then left Gimlet, the podcast producer, altogether. Several others described taking extended breaks from work to escape scrutiny, meaning from her, exiting their job or undergoing long-term therapy after working with Meghan. The person who interacted professionally with her says, I think if Meghan acknowledged her own shortcomings or personal contributions to situations, rather than staying trapped in a victim narrative, her perception might be better. And going on to say the prince and the starlet, according to Vanity Fair, have become local villains in Montecito. Quoting someone as saying they are the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet. They moved from England to get away from the scrutiny of the press, supposedly, and all they do is try to get in the press in the United States. So what does all this tell us?
What it tells us is, rather comically, that when you have this couple who, remember on their website, it says that they're all about compassion. They're compassionate people. They're also all about mental health and helping people with mental health. They've been very vocal about that recently, about the perils of online trolling and the effect it has on people's mental health. And yet here we are with Vanity Fair, the Hollywood Bible, the thing that Meghan was most thrilled about getting the cover of a few years ago when she got engaged to Harry, which went down very badly with the palace at the time, I can tell you. But now it reveals that actually she in particular is a nasty little bully who sends staff into therapy. Think about that for a moment. This also follows all the stories about her bullying staff over here in the UK. Which is unresolved. NDAs stopped all that stuff coming out, but she bullied people in a very unpleasant way over here. So it's no surprise to people who work at Buckingham Palace. They saw and witnessed all this here. So I just showed, look, they're a pair of hypocrites, they're a pair of chancers, as the Spotify guy called them, a pair of effing grifters. And they're desperately trying to maintain some kind of future as a renegade royal couple when they're no longer part of the royal family. The royals don't talk to them. The king does not talk to his own son. None of the senior royals talk to these two. They are total pariahs in the family because the only currency they have is trashing the royal family and the monarchy. And every time they try and do something else, nobody cares. No one cared about their podcast series. Nobody cared about the polo series recently. Nobody cared about any of it. All they want to hear is the dirt. And these two for 5 years have reveled and wallowed in royal dirt for vast amounts of money. And that's what makes Prince Harry's ongoing campaign against the UK newspapers, which had another flare-up this week, so laughably hypocritical, because he talks about intrusion into royal privacy. And yet, if you ask any senior member of the royal family, who has invaded your privacy the worst, it's Prince Harry. It's the guy who gave the inside track for money to Oprah, to Netflix, to his publishers, to anyone who would pay top dollar. This guy invaded the privacy of his family. And yet he has the gall to present himself as some great standard bearer of ethics and decency when it comes to royal privacy. Do me a favor.
All right, folks. This is a complete disaster for Meghan and Harry. Vanity Fair, yes, the same magazine Meghan was once thrilled to be featured in, has now completely turned on her. And it's brutal. They're calling her a diva, an entitled hypocrite, and worst of all, staff members who worked with her say they needed therapy after dealing with her. And guess who's here to break it all down? Piers Morgan is not holding back, exposing Meghan and Harry's latest PR nightmare, their desperate Hollywood hustle, and why even Montecito locals now think they are the most disingenuous people on the planet. So let's start with what Vanity Fair actually said, because folks, this is bad. According to the magazine, Meghan is a nightmare to work for. Former employees describe her as a diva, who is impossible to please. And get this. One staffer had to take a leave of absence after just 3 episodes of her podcast Archetypes. And it gets worse. Some staff members say they either quit their jobs entirely or needed long-term therapy after working with Meghan. Therapy. Let that sink in. What kind of boss makes their staff need therapy? And here's the kicker. Vanity Fair even says that Meghan and Harry are now local villains in Montecito. Neighbors are calling them the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet. I mean, wow. Even Hollywood, even their rich Montecito neighbors have had enough. Now here's where Piers Morgan comes in, and let me tell you, he is not holding back. Piers calls Meghan and Harry a pair of hypocrites and grifters, and honestly, he's right. Think about it, they left the UK because they wanted privacy. But what did they do next? Signed massive Netflix and Spotify deals, gave a tell-all interview to Oprah, and now constantly complain about how they're misunderstood in the press. And let's not forget, Spotify dropped them, Netflix is getting tired of them, and now Vanity Fair is calling them out. They didn't escape the press, they just switched continents. And now they're being exposed on both sides of the Atlantic.
Right. Sooner or later, everybody turns on them. It seems like just all they need is exposure. All they need is time. She's bullied almost all of her staff out of the job. They all wind up leaking to the press what a horrid nightmare she was to work with. And the other piece in the Vanity Fair article, which was amazing, was about him and how neither one of them showed up with any ideas on what to do. Like, actually, how are we going to earn all this money? And that one of the ideas for the podcast that he had was that he would get people like Vladimir Putin and Mark Zuckerberg to sit with him. But it wasn't because he said everybody's got damage in their childhood. And I had damage in my childhood too. So you're thinking, okay, all right, I guess he's going to use that to bond with them. No, the conclusion was that their experiences had made them into sociopaths, according to Harry. And he wanted to explore how they became sociopaths, but he remained totally normal and was not, quote, one of these bad guys. And the Vanity Fair pointing out, trying to get a season's worth of world-famous sociopaths to talk about how they developed sociopathy would be what is referred to in access journalism as a booking challenge.
I mean, they're just so completely deluded. That's the thing that always strikes me. It's utter delusion. And they're also just shocking hypocrites. So do you remember when they were lecturing us all about carbon footprint and climate change? And then they were using Elton John and George Clooney's private planes like taxi services. They actually, on the day of her $500,000 baby shower in New York, attended by all the great and good ladies of New York, that was the same day that from their then Twitter account, they lectured the British people about poverty. I mean, you couldn't make it up. And now what's happened, I mean, what's most laughable of all, in a sort of horrible way, is that she's got this new series where she's trying to be the new Martha Stewart, where she's going to be cooking in her fancy mansion for all her fancy friends, very fancy food. Can you imagine a less appropriate thing in California right now than this fake princess, this duchess trading off the title she got given by an institution she's tried to ruin, actually prancing about in this kitchen in a multi-million-dollar mansion with her famous friends in California when 12 to 14,000 people have just lost their homes in the most horrendous fires that the city's ever had in Los Angeles and that the state's ever seen. It is so unbelievably inappropriate that that series could go ahead, but I bet it does.
Piers even points out that Meghan was obsessed with Vanity Fair when she first got featured in it. But now, they've turned against her. That's how bad things have gotten. And honestly, if even Vanity Fair is done with Meghan and Harry, that tells you everything you need to know. Now let's talk about something Meghan prays we all forget, the bullying allegations. Because folks, they're back. Remember when former palace aides accused Meghan of being a toxic boss who bullied and mistreated staff? Well, guess what? It wasn't just palace staff. Now even her US team is saying the same thing. According to Vanity Fair, former staff members who worked on archetypes left because of Meghan's behavior. Some said she was impossible to work with, others say they couldn't handle the pressure, and some even had to seek therapy. This is not a coincidence, people. There's a pattern here. First the palace staff, then the Spotify team, now the Netflix and Montecito circles. Everywhere Meghan goes, chaos follows. And let's not forget, Buckingham Palace conducted an investigation into Meghan's bullying, but the results were never made public. Why? Because they knew it would be devastating for Meghan's reputation. No. Vanity Fair just confirmed it all. So the real question is, how much longer can Meghan keep pretending she's the victim before everyone sees the truth? And now, let's look at the bigger picture. Because this Vanity Fair piece could be the final sign that Hollywood is washing its hands of Meghan and Harry. Spotify canceled their contract. Netflix losing patience with them. Hollywood A-listers no longer associating with them. No. Vanity Fair is calling them out. Think about this. When Meghan and Harry first arrived in Hollywood, they were treated like A-list royalty. Everyone wanted to be seen with them. But now, they're struggling to book big guests, their business deals are crumbling, and even Hollywood media is exposing them.
Yeah, they're saying it's actually going to pick up in March now as opposed to the January launch date.
Piers Morgan even says that if they don't change course soon, their careers are done. And let's be honest, at this point it might already be too late. So, let's break it down. Vanity Fair just destroyed Meghan and Harry, exposing their diva behavior, their hypocrisy, and how even Hollywood has turned on them. Former staff needed therapy after working with Meghan. Her bullying accusations are back. Vanity Fair calls them disingenuous and entitled. Even Montecito locals don't want them. Piers Morgan tears into their hypocrisy. They ran from UK press just to chase US headlines. Is this the final sign that Hollywood is finished with Meghan and Harry? At this point, Meghan and Harry's credibility is completely shattered. And the question is, will they finally admit they've burned too many bridges, or will they just keep playing the victim? So now the big question. Are Meghan and Harry's Hollywood days officially over? Will even more former staff members come forward with stories? And should Buckingham Palace finally release the bullying report? Let me know in the comments.